The grave shouldn't have existed. Josiah Kane found it in the clearing just past the dry creek bed, where the pines grew thick and the light barely reached the ground. He'd been tracking a lame horse for the better part of 2 hours, following hoof scrapes and broken brush, when he'd stumbled into the small plot of earth that made his blood run cold, a wooden cross, freshly carved. Beneath it, a mound of disturbed soil, dark and recently turned, and nailed to the cross, a name and a date burned into the wood with careful, deliberate precision. Sarah Millbrook, born March 4, 1867, died October 15, 1885. Josiah stared at the date, October 15th. Tomorrow. He pulled his pocket watch from his vest. The hands read 4:30, October 14th, 1885. The sun was already sinking behind the ridge, throwing long shadows across the clearing. He glanced around. No cabin, no camp, no sign of life except the grave and the cross, and the impossible date that hadn't happened yet. His hand drifted to the revolver at his hip. "Who the hell digs a grave for tomorrow?" he muttered. The wind didn't answer. Josiah was 43, worn down by a life spent drifting from town to town, job to job, never staying long enough to be remembered. He had no family, no friends, just a horse, a bedroll, and a reputation for being good with a gun and bad with people. He preferred it that way. People complicated things. People asked questions. People wanted things from you that you couldn't give. But this was different. He crouched beside the grave, running his fingers over the disturbed earth. It was loose, freshly dug within the last day or two. The cross was new, the wood still pale and unseasoned. Whoever had made this had done it recently, and they'd known when the girl would die. Josiah stood, his jaw tight. He should leave, ride back to the trail, forget what he'd seen, let whatever dark business this was unfold without him. He'd learned long ago not to get involved in other people's tragedies, but the name stayed with him. Sarah Millbrook, a child, 18 years old, if the dates were right, and someone had already decided she was dead. He looked down at the grave one more time, then turned toward the trees. That's when he heard it. A voice, faint, distant, carried on the wind like a whisper. "Help me." Josiah froze. The voice came again, thin and desperate. "Please help me." It was coming from the east, deeper into the woods. He drew his gun and started walking. "Nice, hash." He found her tied to a tree. She was small, pale, with dark hair matted against her face and terror in her wide, unblinking eyes. Her wrists were bound with rope, raw and bleeding from struggling. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. She looked half-starved, trembling in the fading light. When she saw Josiah, she flinched. "Don't," she gasped. "Please don't." "Easy," Josiah said, holstering his gun and raising his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." She stared at him like she didn't believe him. He moved slowly, deliberately, kneeling in front of her. "What's your name?" Her lips trembled. "Sarah." His stomach dropped. "Sarah Millbrook." Her eyes widened. "How do you know my name?" Josiah didn't answer. He pulled his knife and cut the ropes. She collapsed forward, gasping, clutching her wrists. He caught her before she hit the ground. "Who did this to you?" he asked. "My uncle," she whispered. "He brought me out here, said he was taking me to town, but he tied me up. He said," her voice broke, "he said I had to die. Why? I don't know." Tears streaked her face. "He kept saying it was the only way, that it had to be me, that it had to be tomorrow." Josiah's blood turned to ice. Tomorrow, the same date on the grave. "Where is he now?" Josiah asked. "He left, said he'd come back at dawn to finish it." Josiah stood, pulling Sarah to her feet. "Can you walk?" She nodded weakly. "Good, we're leaving." But before he could take a step, a voice cut through the trees. "I wouldn't do that." Josiah spun, his hand flying to his gun. A man stepped into the clearing, tall, gaunt, with hollow eyes and a rifle leveled at Josiah's chest. He wore a preacher's collar, stained and crooked. His smile was thin and joyless. "Mr. Kane, is it?" the man said. "I saw you ride through town yesterday, heard you were passing through." His gaze shifted to Sarah. step away from the girl." Josiah didn't move. "You her uncle, Reverend Thaddeus Millbrook." And yes, the man's voice was calm, almost serene. "This is family business, Mr. Kane. It doesn't concern you. You tied up a girl and dug her grave. That concerns me plenty." Thaddeus' smile widened. "You don't understand. This isn't cruelty. It's mercy. It's salvation." "Salvation," Josiah repeated flatly. "My brother, Sarah's father, made a pact 20 years ago, a bargain with something old, something that lives in these woods." Thaddeus's eyes gleamed. "It gave him prosperity, wealth, a good harvest every year. But the price comes due. Every generation, a life must be given, a child of the bloodline. Tomorrow, at dawn." Josiah stared at him. "You're insane." "I'm faithful." Thaddeus raised the rifle higher. "Step away from her, Mr. Kane. Let me do what must be done. If I don't, the whole town suffers. Crops fail, livestock die, people starve. One life for many. It's God's arithmetic." Sarah whimpered behind Josiah. He didn't move. "You really believe that?" Josiah asked quietly. "I've seen what happens when the pact is broken. Then break it." Thaddeus' face hardened. "Step aside. Last warning." Josiah's hand hovered over his gun. He could draw fast, maybe faster than Thaddeus could pull the trigger, maybe, but if he was wrong they'd both die here. He looked at Sarah, terrified, fragile, barely more than a child, and made his choice. "No, mice, hash, hash." The shot rang out, but it wasn't from Thaddeus. The Reverend staggered, his rifle clattering to the ground. Blood bloomed across his shoulder. He dropped to his knees, clutching the wound, his face twisted in shock and pain. Josiah spun. Another man stood at the edge of the clearing, older, weathered, with a sheriff's star pinned to his vest, and a smoking revolver in his hand. His face was grim. "Sheriff Dalton." Thaddeus gasped. "What are you?" "Shut your mouth, Thaddeus." Dalton stepped forward, his gun still raised. His eyes flicked to Josiah. "You the drifter who rode in yesterday?" Josiah nodded slowly. "Good timing." Dalton glanced at Sarah. "You all right, girl?" She nodded shakily. Dalton turned back to Thaddeus, who was still kneeling, clutching his shoulder. "I knew you were up to something. Took me 2 days to track you out here." He spat into the dirt. "A pact, a sacrifice. You really think I'd let you murder a child over some backwoods superstition?" "It's not superstition," Thaddeus hissed. "It's real. You don't know what's out here, what's waiting." "I know you're a madman. You'll see," Thaddeus whispered. "When the sun rises and she's still alive, you'll see what happens, what comes." Dalton raised his gun. "Get up. You're coming back to town. You'll hang for this." But Thaddeus didn't move. He was staring past them into the trees. His face had gone white. "It's here," he breathed. The temperature dropped. Josiah felt it first, a wrongness in the air, a pressure that made his ears ring and his skin prickle. The wind died. The birds went silent. Even the rustling of the leaves stopped. Sarah grabbed Josiah's arm. "What's happening?" He didn't know, but then he heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from deeper in the woods. Something was walking toward them. Dalton turned, his gun trained on the darkness between the trees. "Who's there?" No answer. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and then from the shadows it emerged. Not a man, not an animal, something else. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs too long and joints that bent wrong. Its face was a smooth, featureless mask of pale bark, except for 2 hollow gouges where eyes should have been. It wore the shape of a man, like a costume, stitched together from roots and bone, and something older than the forest itself. Thaddeus laughed, a broken, desperate sound. I told you it was real." The thing tilted its head toward Sarah, and took another step forward. Dalton fired. The bullet tore through the creature's chest. It didn't flinch, didn't bleed, just kept walking. Dalton fired again, and again. Nothing. "Run!" Josiah shouted. He grabbed Sarah and bolted. Behind them Dalton's screams cut short. "Thash hash!" They ran until Josiah's lungs burned, and Sarah collapsed. He caught her, pulling her into the hollow of a fallen tree. They pressed themselves into the darkness, gasping, trembling. Outside, the forest was deathly still. "What was that?" Sarah whispered. "I don't know. It's coming for me, isn't it?" Josiah didn't answer, because she was right. He checked his gun. 3 bullets left. Not that they'd done Dalton any good. Sarah was crying silently, her whole body shaking. "I don't want to die." Josiah looked at her, this girl who'd done nothing wrong, who'd been born into a bargain she never made, condemned by blood and circumstance. He thought about the grave, the date, tomorrow. "You're not going to," he said. "How do you know?" "Because I won't let it happen." She looked at him with hollow, disbelieving eyes. "You can't stop it. No one can." Josiah reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was a silver compass, old, tarnished, the only thing his father had ever given him before disappearing into the mountains and never coming back. He pressed it into Sarah's hand. "My old man told me once that some things in this world are older than us, meaner than us, but they follow rules. They have to." He met her gaze. "Your uncle said the pact demanded a life at dawn, but dawn hasn't come yet, and you're still breathing." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe the pact can be broken. Maybe it just needs someone willing to stand in the way. That's suicide. Maybe." Josiah smiled faintly. "But I've been alone a long time, Sarah. Never had much reason to be anywhere. Never had much reason to stay." He closed her fingers around the compass. "You've got your whole life ahead of you. That's reason enough." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I don't even know you." "Doesn't matter." Outside, the footsteps began again, closer, slower, hunting. Josiah stood, reloading his gun even though he knew it wouldn't help. "Stay here. Don't move. Don't make a sound." "What are you going to do?" He looked back at her one last time. "Buy you till dawn." Fash hash hash. Josiah stepped into the clearing where the grave waited. The creature was already there. It stood beside the wooden cross, silent and still, its hollow eyes fixed on him. The air around it shimmered with cold. The ground beneath its feet had turned black. Josiah raised his gun. "You want her," he said. "You go through me first." The creature tilted its head, and then it moved, fast. Josiah fired. The bullet passed through it like smoke. He dove sideways as a limb, too long, too sharp, slashed through the space where he'd been standing. He rolled, fired again, scrambled behind a tree. The creature didn't stop. It tore through the trunk like paper. Josiah ran, not away, toward. He tackled the thing, slamming into it with all his weight. It was like hitting stone. Pain exploded through his shoulder, but he held on, dragging it down, buying seconds. The creature's limb pierced his side. Josiah gasped, blood flooding his mouth, but he didn't let go. "Not her," he choked out. "Not today." The creature stared down at him with those hollow, empty eyes, and then somewhere in the distance a sound, a rooster crowing. Dawn. The creature froze. Slowly it pulled its limb free. Josiah collapsed, gasping, clutching his side. Blood poured between his fingers. The creature stepped back, and then impossibly, it began to crumble. Roots and bark and bone fell away, disintegrating into dust. The hollow eyes dimmed. The long limbs curled inward. Within moments, there was nothing left but ash on the wind. The pact was broken. Josiah lay on his back, staring up at the sky as it turned pink and gold. Footsteps, human ones. Sarah knelt beside him, her face streaked with tears. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he lied. "You're not fine." She pressed her hands over his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me, please." Josiah smiled faintly. "You're safe. That's what matters. You saved me. Someone had to." Sheriff Dalton stumbled into the clearing, battered, bleeding but alive. He took one look at Josiah and swore, "We need to get him to a doctor." Between them they lifted Josiah and carried him back through the forest. Myas, asterisk, 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 asterisk. Josiah Kane didn't die, not that day. The wound took weeks to heal, and the town doctor said it was a miracle he'd survived at all. Sarah stayed with him the whole time, bringing him water, changing bandages, refusing to leave his side. When he was strong enough to sit up, she showed him the compass he'd given her. "You said your father gave you this." "He did." "Do you think he would have been proud of what you did?" Josiah thought about it. "I don't know. Never knew him well enough to say." "Well, I think he would have been." She smiled, a real smile, the first he'd seen from her. When Josiah finally left town a month later, saddle packed and ready to drift again, Sarah was waiting by the gate. "You don't have to leave," she said quietly. "I know." "Then why?" Josiah looked back at the town, the place where he'd almost died, where he'd done something that mattered for the first time in his life. "Because you've got a future here, and I'm not part of it." "You could be." He smiled. "Maybe, someday." He rode toward the horizon, the morning sun warm on his face, and for the first time in years, Josiah Kane didn't feel so alone. Mice final shot. The grave remains in the clearing, untouched. The wooden cross still stands, but the date has changed, carved over, replaced with new words burned deep into the wood. "Here lies no one because someone chose to stand." And beneath it, in the soft earth, wild flowers have begun to grow.